Please be seated. Title of my sermon this morning is "Which Path Do We Choose?" Taken from the verse, "Which of the two did the will of the Father?" Often it is easier for us to take the uncomplicated way, the path of least resistance. But choosing the problem-free road may alter our faith. Since we have the confirmation class here this morning, I want to explore this issue through the lens of bullying. 3.2 million teenagers are bullied each year, and as many as 160,000 of them skip school on a daily basis because of it. Today, as much bullying happens in the hallways as it does on online websites, social media outlets. And let me say that while I'm referring to teenagers and bullying, I've encountered plenty of adult bullies at church. Perhaps you know someone at work or in your social circles that you would define as a bully. So it's a problem. Bullying persists because we allow it to. For many, it's easier to look the other way. If you're like me, life is busy. Life in Rye comes at us fast, sometimes too fast. Because we're busy, it is so easy to neglect and overlook people in trouble. We say, "I've got better things to do," or "I have enough problems of my own." We swipe over rude comments on Facebook or said about someone in a conversation. We look the other way because of our busyness, but there are other reasons, aren't there? We may see an instance of bullying and think we don't know the whole story. We don't want to be that person who gets it wrong. We have to consider, is it really bullying or is there a backstory? I think of my kids. One of them would do something in my sight to the other one just to get the other one in trouble. I would admonish the presumed guilty party only to learn years later that I had punished the innocent one, not the culprit. So we may hesitate to stop bullying because we don't know everything. But there are other reasons we allow bullying to occur. Maybe we don't care or think it doesn't affect us. If we think carefully about it, bullying also happens because some darkly think, "I would do the same thing," or secretly we agree and accept what the bully is doing. The victim is getting what they deserve. But most of us don't go there. If we examine why many of us look the other way, we may unearth a deep reason. We don't stop the bullying because we're scared what will happen to us if we do. The blame may come back at us. The situation might be confused. We'll get punished. We may be ostracized and become a social outcast. But when we allow bullying to persist, a tax is due. There is a cost to our silence. We pay a price for looking the other way. Our faith is held ransom by fear. We are in debt because our faith calls us to respect the dignity of every human being and to love our neighbor as ourselves. If we ignore the bully, we are not living our Christian faith. We are not choosing to do the will of the Father. So we face a dilemma. What do we do? Be scared and keep our head down, or follow God's will? Well, we certainly don't want to be like the son who said, "I'll go work in the vineyard," but doesn't. It's better to be the one who said no, but changed his mind later and went. But understand this: the parable of the two sons is really a condemnation of the religious leaders who confronted Jesus. And the parable is also really a challenge to people of faith to do the will of God. I want to look carefully at what's happening in the Gospel of Matthew for a moment. Following the story in Matthew, Jesus, just 2 days before, triumphantly entered Jerusalem, riding on a colt on a road with palm branches strewn and cloaks thrown down in front of him. Next, he went to the temple and overturned the tables, the tables of the money changers. The next day, he was back in the temple, and the religious leaders confronted him, demanding to know by whose authority he was acting. His cagey response was the parable of the two sons, our reading this morning. The son who said he'd go but didn't was a not-so-veiled reference to the religious leaders. Jesus was saying they weren't following God's will, even though they said they would. Jesus was also saying that there was a cost for their inaction and a price that they're looking away. They were in debt because they ignored what God wanted. Essentially, they were not respecting the dignity of every human being, nor loving their neighbors as themselves. For us, how do we follow God's will when it is easier not to? How do we be faithful when we are scared? We have 3 tools at hand to help us be faithful, to do the will of the Father, to respect every human being, and to love our neighbors. First is courage. As people of faith, we have more courage than we realize. In the Hebrew scriptures, God said to Joshua, "Be strong and courageous. Do not be frightened or dismayed, for the Lord your God is with you wherever you go." We can face the bully because God is with us. Jesus also said, "With God all things are possible." With God's help, we can face what scares us and do anything. We also need patience. When calling out a bully, we need to stand our ground. We need to be firm in our resolve. We must weather the storm with patience. In most instances, the bully will back down when called out because, in truth, most bullies are weak. They lack confidence. They are not courageous. So when a person of faith shines the light and love of God on their actions, most bullies slink away. But sometimes it takes longer. When it does, we need to be firm but patient. We see the wrong. We know we are right, but the bully might not change his or her mind right away. No matter how long it takes, when confronted by the light and love of God, bullies collapse. We can be patient because we trust God. Trust is an essential tool to overcome our fears. The psalmist wrote, "In God I trust, I am not afraid." We trust we are doing God's will. Thus, in the end, God's will wins. Goodness wins. When we call on others to respect the dignity of every human being and to love our neighbors as ourselves, God will support us. God's never-failing care will be with us. God's light and love will win. We may not jump right in and do God's will. We may even say no to God at first. We may say, it's not our problem, or I do not want to get involved. If we're honest, we might even say to God, I'm scared. What will happen if I do? But know this. Even if we are scared and tell God no, we can still choose to do God's will. We can go into the fray. We can stand up for the victim. We can stop the bully. And when we do, we will see our faith grow. We will find new power, the power of God's light and love within us. We will tap into the river of love that no bully can withstand. We can be a beacon of hope and goodness to others. We can show others the way to respect the dignity of every human being and the way to love others as ourselves.